Any urgent items that are not on the agenda? Councillor Rotorua.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kia ora. Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if we might have an update at some stage, if it's appropriate, on the report that went to Wellington on our housing situation here. We know that there were officials from Wellington or staff from Wellington that came up to assist us on that, and I'm sure there probably is some ministerial debate going on in Wellington, but if we can get an update at some stage, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Rotorua. So elected members received an update in confidential recently, and the Chief Executive has indicated he will do so in confidential today. Nothing else, so moving on. We have a petition this morning. So welcome to Mr. Robert Lee from the Save Springfield Golf Course petitioners, and welcome to the table, Robert, and I see Daniel is joining you, and you have 10 minutes to speak to your petition, and thank you for bringing it to us today.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, may I ask a question, please?
Yes.
It is regarding the petition. Receiving the petition today, that would not discount the Springfield community from speaking and presenting again at the submissions for the long-term plan, just so that there are two distinct differences there?
No, so long-term plan feedback and
they may wish to
closes
speak
on the 30th. The petitioners have already attended an LTP engagement session and spoken to councillors at that.
Yes, but I'm talking about they won't prejudice their opportunity to speak later, but during the to their submission to the long-term plan. Are they two distinct areas?
No, so we're not having hearings to the long-term plan.
Right.
As with the previous long-term plan, we've had community engagement sessions where we've had kanoti.
So this is in addition to.
So this is in addition to.
Thank you.
Sorry, Robert, carry on. The floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Oh, thank you, Reynold. I understand I'll be given 5 minutes to present the petition with plus questions and 5 minutes to speak to the long-term plan. So I'll start with 5 minutes on the petition, and then I'll take questions on that and move on to the LTP. On behalf...
sorry, Robert, I'll just correct you there. It's just the petition. That's all we've got on the agenda today. You've got 10 minutes. You can make any points you like, whether it is around the petition and its effect on the long-term plan. You've got 10 minutes. The floor is yours.
Well, I was only saying what had been communicated to me in an email. Anyway, let's get on with it,
let's
shall we?
Let's wing it and get on with it.
Okay. So on behalf of 5,017 adults who will be of voting age in October 2022, I present this petition. These people request that the Rotorua Council recognise and declare the Springfield Golf Course to be a taonga, a treasure to the people of Rotorua, and that the land should continue to be leased to the Springfield Golf Club and used as a golf course. The reason for the petition is that the Rotorua Council has recently proposed turning the Springfield Golf Course into sports fields and a housing development. The undersigned reject that proposal. With your permission, I'd like to give one of these to each of the elected members to view. If Daniel could come forward and do that for us.
Yep. You carry on, Daniel, and you can keep speaking, Robert.
Thank you. We'd also like to present each of the elected members with a report listing each of the petitioners, which is over here. As you will see, this is not an online petition. We made a decision early on that we would go with an old-fashioned petition, and only people who cared enough about this would make an effort to do so. Undoubtedly, we could have gathered 20,000 signatures with an online petition with the magic of social media. That's not the route that we chose. Every signature that's on this petition means something to the person that signed it. The collection of signatures over the last 12 months has been low-key, easy, and organic. Local shops have opened their doors to us. They've given us their valuable retail space. Residents have allowed us to put our signs on their fences. We have an active Facebook community of more than 700 people. Golfers and residents alike have downloaded the petition from our website, printed them off, and they've asked their friends and family to sign, and their work colleagues. We attended the home show in February, and we collected about 600 signatures over 3 days there. We were at the Kuria Park Market last weekend. Here's our experience. About 9 out of 10 people that we engage with support the saving of Springfield. The proposal is at face value repugnant to most residents and ratepayers of Rotorua. To the course is a taonga. It's not just any golf course. This is Danny Lee's home course. New Zealand's top golfer in the last 10 years. More than that, it is their tūranga waiwai. To residents who live in the area, who've made investment decisions over the last 70 years, it's also a taonga. The golf course has no gates, has no fences, and the residents come from miles around to enjoy the green space, the trees, the small manicured forest that is the golf course. But many other people signed the petition as well. People from across town in Linmore and Tarawera, Paradise Valley, from Waikiri to Hamarana. Not because they have any affection or affinity to the golf course. $61 million is a lot of money for the ratepayers to pay to turn a sports field into a sports field. Over the course of the last year, I've spoken to a lot of people. I haven't met any unicorns, and that may be because unicorns don't exist. I also haven't met a ratepayer who doesn't have a horse in this race who supports this proposal. The only people I've encountered who support this proposal are senior figures in various sporting codes who perceive they would benefit from the proposal going ahead, from council employees, and from senior members of the other golf clubs who decided not to host our petition. They may or may not like our members or want our members, but they want our membership fees. Again, senior figures in these golf courses. We actually have a lot of support from the membership of those golf courses. So who supports this proposal? People who have an interest of some description, a conflict of interest in this. We've had the sporting codes that I've mentioned. We've also had businesses in town that would benefit from the $61 million the council proposes to spend. So at this point, I'd like to invite the Vice President of the Springfield Golf Club to respond after all the petitioners in their interests and in their favour. Gary Herbert.
Welcome, Gary.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Gary Herbert, Vice President, Springfield Golf Club. I've been a member of this club for 30 odd years now, and I've seen the club go through its ups and downs, and I have to say that right now, Springfield Golf Club is in the best position it's been in the last 15 to 20 years. And that's fantastic, and we're growing. Since COVID, we've really grown. Just before I go any further, I'd just like to thank Robert and his team for the wonderful work they've done in getting this petition together, and the 5,700 17 people that have signed it. I think that shows, from where I stand, that we have huge support within not only the Springfield community, but Rotorua as a whole, that we don't want a sports precinct in Springfield. The other thing I'd like to say is I have here a letter which I wish to present to CEO Jeff Williams today to renew the deed of lease for Springfield Golf Club for a further 33 years post 2027. I have another copy here if you wish. Springfield's been known as the Club of Champions for the last 13 years. The likes of Danny Lee on the PGA Tour in America. Every time he goes out to play, and Frank Nobilo is there commentating with the sports team, he always acknowledges Danny from Springfield, Rotorua, New Zealand. What better publicity could you have right across the world? We've also had Ian Peters, who's won the New Zealand Amateur Championship twice. Brenda Ormsby, who's played on the European LPGA Tour. James Tawariki won the New Zealand National Maori Tournament 2019, age of 16. These are all people that have played at Springfield. That's why we're known as the Club of Champions. No other golf club in Rotorua can claim that. I've just recently moved into Springfield, back from being away for 8 years, because of what we have there. And the golf course is very much a part of that. If this place, if it gets closed, I will be moving. I'll be out of there. Because I don't want to be living in an environment that's going to be created by a sports precinct. The travel, the lighting, the noise, the list goes on. We have a few members sitting here today. They're very passionate indeed. And a number of you councillors would have seen that 2 Monday nights ago in Springfield Golf Club when it was packed to the hilt. We couldn't fit any more people in. 163 plus people, not one supporting this proposal. What else can I say? We recently got this document prepared by New Zealand Turf Management Systems talking about the environment. If we don't do this, then that area will deteriorate. There will be flooding, there will be no trees, there'll be buildings, sterile sports fields that will eventually, in a short space of time, become unused because the sports teams will not be around because they've been drawn from their communities and there'll be no passion, no rivalry, no community whatsoever. So if you want to rip the heart out of the smaller communities of Rotorua and take away that passion and that rivalry, so be it. But we're here today to say Springfield does not want it, does not need it.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Robert. Robert, are there any, we're due to wrap up the 10 minutes, but are there any comments you'd like to end with? And Gomanthi will pick up the letter to Jeff before you leave. Thank you.
Yes, there are a few comments I'd like to get to. I think what Vice President Gary is saying is that you wanted to make Rotorua a great place to live, work, play and invest. Springfield already is, and that would this proposal would change that for the worse. I have serious reservations about the process that the Council has followed to date. In March 2020, we were told that the feedback gathered would inform any plans going forward before funding options are explored, and any final proposal is prepared for submission into the Council's 2021 long-term plan. We were told also the long-term plan will provide a further opportunity for community feedback. Well, the feedback that was provided to the Council was overwhelmingly opposed to that. In May 2020, the Council wrote to the same 300 or so residents around the perimeter of the golf course and said, as a result of the proposed Westbrook Sport and Recreation Precinct timeline, the precinct timeline will be extended for it to be considered in the next long-term plan in 2024. Nevertheless, the council released a draft long-term plan in March 2021, and the Westbrook precinct proposal is in there at $61 million. I note that it appears in the long-term plan, and yet it hasn't gone out for public consultation. It hasn't even been discussed at a full council meeting.
So
there has been no vote
I'll clarify
by
that.
the elected members on this proposal, and I'd submit that this council simply cannot slip an item like this into the long-term plan without following the proper and correct processes. The people of Rotorua expect more, expect better, and the people of Rotorua want to know where they stand with their councillors. This needs to be put onto a council agenda before it gets finalised into the long-term plan, and there needs to be a vote on it. This is going to be a major election issue in 2022. We need some transparency.
Thank you, Robert. So, look, I'll make a couple of points. So no decision on the Westbrook precinct project has been made by council. The proposal has been signalled to be part of community consultation in the 2024-2034 long-term plan. In order to bring this conversation to the community as part of the LTP process, council advised the proposal would need further investigation and planning work, and in the meantime to ensure it was in the best position to be considered. So that's the status of the proposal at this stage.
May I respond?
I'll just open the floor now for councillors to ask any Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that came out of that meeting the other night, which I was pretty impressed with, was the contribution that Springfield makes to our council's income, and that's one of the few sporting events that actually contributes to council coffers rather than receives from council coffers. I'd just see if you can expand on that just a touch.
Sure, and most recently, year ended 2020, the Rotorua Springfield Golf Course paid more than $60,000 to council in rates, water rates and lease. To compare that with, say, Rotorua Cricket, I'm an ex-cricketer myself, so I'm kind of familiar with it. Rotorua Cricket paid around $10,000 to council, but it would have cost the council in the vicinity of $100,000 to provide cricket, to make cricket available in Rotorua. So golf is really the only financially viable sport as far as the council is concerned.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, through you, Chair. A question about the nature of youth engagement provided by the golf club. What sort of engagement do youth have?
Oh.
Thank you.
Currently, I'd have to say that our junior youth, if you'd like to say it, is in need of some attention. We do have junior members within the club. We also have, amongst the three clubs, the Guysland Futures Golf, which has about 100 members, and tells them to play 3 different courses. We also have Paul Hartstone and Barclay, who, if parents so choose, can contact them and get lessons for their children. There's not much more I can say to that, sorry.
I would add that Danny Lee went to Rotorua Boys High, where they have a golf academy and study golf as a sport. The Springfield Practice Fairway is actually one of the things that make the Springfield Golf Course quite different from the other courses and appealing to people like Danny Lee and youth, so that they can actually get out there and spend a lot of time in a place that's actually enjoyable to be, and it's not tiny.
There is, sorry, Robert, there is one thing that I did note when I was at the golf club the other day, is that although both Rotorua and Lakeview Golf Club currently have coaches coaching the Guysland Futures, it is quite relevant to say that a lot of those kids come over to Springfield, and I saw this the other night where Kenny Allen brought 5 of those children from Rotorua Golf Club to Springfield to play. And the reason that a lot of the kids come to play there, and the reason that Danny played there the whole time, is because you play Rotorua, you play Lakeview, they are wide open golf courses with very few trees. Springfield, you have to play the game. You have to position your ball, and that's what they come to Springfield for, to straighten out their game.
It's a more technically demanding course.
Councillor Rokawa Tate, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming and speaking to your petition this morning. It seems to me that so much actually hinges on the lease, the renewal of the lease. The letter that you've given to us this morning, is that the first indication that council has had that you will be attempting to seek a renewal of the lease?
That is correct. Our intention was probably not to do this until probably 3 years out from the end of the lease, but given what's happened in the last 12 to 18 months, we see it prudent to start having that discussion now.
The previous lease was renewed 5 years before it ran out.
Councillor Kumar, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. And through the Chair, good morning, Robert, Daniel, and Graham, for your presentation this morning regarding the petition. My question is, you say the golf club contributes quite a substantial amount to the council coffers. Understanding that in Rotorua there is a lack of housing, and the council have earmarked as a sporting precinct some of it and some of it as housing. Say if there were to be 160 houses there, would that not, the rates of the housing not offset what the golf course would be compared to what the golf club is paying?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, take your point of order. That's not for the presenters to answer. You know, it's not a given that would be council housing that'd be rented. So I'm not going to ask the presenters to answer that.
If I can just speak quickly to that. Councillor Kumar, I don't know if you're aware, well, you probably are aware, you live very close to there. And the fact is that that end of the golf course, when it rains heavily, it floods. So the high density housing that is proposed to go in there would be a substantial cost in trying to divert all the stormwater that comes off Otonga Road down through the golf course. That gets to 2.5 metres deep in the deepest areas when we get torrential rain, almost gets to the top of the driveway. So I don't know, you have to work out where the $63 million and 150 houses, it's better than $62,000 in your bank.
Councillor Maxwell, last question.
Kia ora, Robert, Daniel, and Gary. First of all, thank you for hosting and running a very well organised meeting the other Monday night. Thank you. You keep mentioning 61 million, but that's are you aware, what is the portion that really we're talking about in Springfield?
I'm not aware that it's been broken down in any of the council documents provided.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I accept
that's
that's probably
right,
a
because we
question the
haven't got
submitters,
that.
the presenters can't answer correctly, but we have that information from staff.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Look,
But
gentlemen,
thank you again.
thank you to you, Robert, Daniel and Gary, and your supporters for coming here today. Thank you also for inviting elected members to your meeting on April the 19th. Sorry I couldn't get there. And thank you for the respectful way that you presented the petition here today.
Excuse me, Councillor Donaldson, just before I finish, there's 3 letters here. One is from the Korean Society and 2 from staff members of Springfield Golf Club. Can I also table those?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry.
So we now have a presentation from the Rotorua Air Quality Working Party led by Councillor Thurston. You brought a whole team along today to present. I'll leave it to you to make the introductions. Kia ora and welcome.
Mr. Chairman, we actually bring good news today, so you can take a little respite on that. Can I just invite my fellow councillor and esteemed colleague, Te Taru White, to mihi you on behalf of Toi Moana. Kia ora, Te Taru.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa e tua ki tēnei, i te taha te ropu nei, te taha o te kaunihira o Toi Moana, i te whakamihi ki a koutou i tēnei. Rera te aroa waka te aroa tana tēnā ki te kaue, tēnei ki o te ki a koutou. E te tiamana, te mea tuarua mo te kaunihira nei, e mihana ki a koe. Kia koutou mā, ngā me mo te kaunihira, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou e rau i te tuinui o tēnei pari o tātou. O reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Anei te ropu whakahaere mo te kaupapa o te rā, te whakāturanga, I runga te kaupapa o te Rotorua Equality. Tēnei. Nō reira, kei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Here just to translate for our fellow members here, greetings to you from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and from on behalf of the Ropu here, who work diligently and hard. I'm an observer today in this particular progress. The two drivers for Regional Council are right here before you, and to acknowledge you all on this day and welcome the presentation and the open discussion. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koe te tiamana.
Okay. Kia ora tātou. I rangatira mai kui mā koroma tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Nō reira I māti ata te tau I whakakahi I manaki, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. As I said in my opening remarks, Chairman and Councillors, we bring actually good news today. And I'd just like to introduce some of the people that are assisting us here today. Well known to all of us, of course, is Councillor Winters, and Councillor Winters, of course, is the Chairman of our Monitoring and Operations Committee at Toi Moana. I'd also like to introduce Marion Henton, who's our Senior Regulatory Project Officer and has been on this project since day one, I think it's fair to say. Marion. We're delighted to have with us here Robin Riley, who's the Asset Manager for Bay of Plenty, Thames and Coromandel for Kaingaora. So you'll love her accent when she speaks. Delightful accent. You wait till you hear it. And with her is Catherine Johns, who's the Manager of Community Engagement and Partnership. And both these ladies have travelled some distance to be with us today to present to you. So where's Catherine? I'd also like to acknowledge your staff member, Rosemary Viskovich. Rosemary's been a member of this committee for many, many years, and she, of course, is your Strategic Development Manager here at the Rotorua Lakes Council. And, of course, your good self, Mr Chairman. You. Oh, Councillor Tapsell. Yeah, we haven't seen you for a while. You were busy doing other things last year, but that's okay. We won't hold that against you. Help is on its way, don't worry about it. Okay, so this is going to be a tag presentation, so I will sit down now. And the other one I failed to mention was Dr. Phil Schumacher, well known to everyone, the Medical Officer for Health. So if we can kick off this slide.
Who's driving it?
Oh, who's going to drive it? Marion's going to drive it. What I'd like to say first up is this is an excellent and classic example of collaboration between two local government entities, yourself and ourselves. And as you have seen by the team that I've introduced you to today, it's like the BBC here. You didn't want me coming to you in stereo. Okay. As I said, it's been an excellent example in collaboration. So, and we have been going, as you see, since 2008. My commitment and the commitment of my colleagues, I think first and foremost, is in acknowledging this as a public health issue for our community. And I know Dr. Phil will explain that in detail when he comes to his presentation. But as you see there, as I mentioned in my introductory remarks, the members are the Medical Officer of Health for the Bay of Plenty, and yourselves, the Rotorua Lakes Council, ourselves, Kaingaora, Homes and Communities, and we do have up from Wellington at most of our meetings an observer and representative from the Ministry for the Environment. Marion. I think we will, in the course of this short presentation, display to you that we work together to provide direction for improving air quality in the Rotorua airshed. There will be a lot of other initiatives pertaining to this that will be rolled out. As Marion will say as part of her presentation, the grip in terms of public health and contaminants is starting to bite. And I think it's fair to say, Marion, the goalposts are expected to shift in the foreseeable future, but Marion will speak to that when she comes to her presentation. We all know the issues of Rotorua. We live in a cold era, winter time. As I've said flippantly in the past, the chip heaters that have been in some homes in Rotorua have burnt everything from nappies to tin cans over the years, and firewood that's not dry. And so the big driver for this, particularly for myself, has been the public health issues that are surrounding implementing this initiative. So I think we now come to Dr. Phil.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, air quality, it's a health issue, basically, and it's a significant global health issue. We like to think in New Zealand that our air is pristine and clean, and it is certainly better than in many parts of the world. However, there's growing evidence that air quality is a significant health issue, including in New Zealand. And even though the air might, for most of the day, most of the year, look relatively clear and clean, there is no safe level of air pollution. And when we talk about air pollution in this regard, we're talking about very fine particles. So you'll see reference during our presentation to what we call PM10. That refers to particulate matters of 10 micrometers in diameter. In other words, very small particles. And given progress with science and technology, we're now able to measure particles at an even smaller level at particulate matter 2.5 micrometers. These particles are so small you can't see them. However, the smaller the particle is, the further down into the lung it can get, and therefore literally get into the bloodstream. And there's growing evidence of harm from this particulate matter that goes beyond just the respiratory system, and it actually has an effect on our heart. In 2013, the World Health Organization declared that PM10 levels above a certain threshold, there was sufficient evidence that for WHO to be able to say that that is a cause of lung cancer in some instances. And it's really important to realise that there is no safe threshold. The standards for air quality set a threshold that councils must keep below. However, as Councillor Thurston mentioned, the goalposts will continue to change because we need to get better and better. It's not a case of saying, oh, we've got below the threshold, we can rest up now. We need to keep improving things. Next one, thanks, Mary. So the effects of this particulate matter in the air is on everybody. Some people are more affected than others. People who spend more time outside, people whose health, particularly the respiratory health, is somewhat fragile in the first place, and almost by definition, that include young children and particularly older people, as well as the significant proportion of our society with underlying health conditions such as asthma or chronic respiratory disease from smoking or whatever. Fortunately, in most parts of New Zealand, including Rotorua, we never get, almost never, a day so bad that people are struggling to breathe. However, we do on occasions in Rotorua in winter, or have in the past, before we started this work, had days that literally were sufficiently bad in terms of the air quality that people's daily activity was restricted. But yeah, the good news is that we've managed to make things a lot better. So there are both those acute effects when things are really bad on a particular day, as well as the more insidious long-term effects from exposure to this for many, many years during someone's life. The next one. Yeah, everybody is affected, and this is a model from the UK where their problem is more aligned to traffic volumes and people living close to motorways. So you can imagine that would be a particular problem, not so much with the particulate matters, but with other toxic gases like nitrous oxides. But in Rotorua, we know that the areas that are worst affected because of the caldera in which we live are the poorer areas of town. Tends to be Western Heights and Fordlands that get the worst air quality when it's bad. And the next one. So HAPPEN stands for Health and Air Pollution in New Zealand. So this is a scientific study which has been done in the past, and it's in the process of being updated based on data from last year. And this is an epidemiologic study, doesn't look specifically at individuals and hasn't identified the individuals that have been affected, but it's identified the populations that are affected. And from that data, we've been able to deduce the relative impact on Rotorua, taking into account the local population, its makeup, and at the time this was done, back in 2006, the air quality at the time. And now in the right-hand column, you'll see the updated data. Obviously, there's been more people move into the airshed, but we've been able to estimate the improvement, the reduction in the number of deaths due to poor air quality, and the significant reduction in what we call restricted activity days. And everything is able to be monetised, and as a rough guess, there's a significant benefit financially to this community and obviously to individuals from the improvement. Yeah, I'll probably stop there. Pass on. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. So my turn. This is a really good news story, and I'm really proud to be part of council that initiated this program, or the bylaws, back in 2007. And it was regional council that came to RDC at the time and said, we've got an issue, what are you going to do about it? So for me, the proof in the pudding was driving around our community late one night in the middle of winter, observing the smoke in our community and winding down the window and thinking, yes, this is like living in a home full of smokers. And so that was the light bulb moment for me back in 2007. So this has been a really good news story in terms of getting RDC, giving effect to bylaws and then handing them over to regional council to implement. So it's been a collaborative approach with all these different agencies, and we've actually been so successful here, Mr. Chairman, that we've now replicated this working party over in Tauranga. The Ministry for the Environment issued an airshed for the Mount Maunganui Industrial Airshed around the Port of Tauranga, the airport, Hewlett's Road, Totra Street, a lot of heavy industrial around there because we've had exceedances like you wouldn't believe in the last few years. So we now have an airshed over Mount Maunganui, and through the Operations and Monitoring Committee that I chair, we've implemented an Air Quality Working Party, replicating this over there so we can get all the different agencies, we can get the business on board, we can get industry on board to have a clear crack at this. And they've seen the results we've had in the last 15 years over here, so they're trying to get a handle on the issues over in Mount Maunganui as well. So Regional Council spent about $5 million in the last 10 years to improve the air quality. So that's the cost to this council, not only the cost to the consumers, the ratepayers of the community. So it's big business, it's been a big commitment by us, and as we've seen from Dr. Phil's evidence, there's been a real effect to the community. Next one, please, Marianne. So we've done it two ways. The stick and the carrot always seems to work, and we had the bylaw reviewed in 2017 after about having been going for 10 years. We've got Plan Change 13, which is through the Natural Resource Plan, and then we've supported the incentive schemes with hot swap loans, low income heating grants, which have been really popular. Kāinga Ora will speak, and they've been a really good owner of houses in Rotorua, and they've updated all their own homes in Rotorua. So all the different agencies have come on board, and we've got sustainability options going forward as well. And the next one is the air quality bylaw. We've removed just on 850 open fires. These are the nice ones that you like to sit beside in a cold winter's night, having a glass of red. No, I shouldn't say that, should I? But, you know, we've removed all those. The point of sale, that was really contentious at the time, through sale and purchase agreements, and we've removed just on 1,100 old fires, which has been the real stick approach, and it's been wasn't well received by real estate agents at the time, but they could see that they were going to have to be part of the collaboration as well. And then we've got Plan Change 13, which is stopping new emissions in the airshed and protecting the goals and the achievements we've done to date in terms of how we've got there. And the last slide I'm thinking, speaking to Marion, is the Ngāpuna industrial area. We do have a monitoring site down at Moses Road in Ngāpuna. That's more for the industrial area down there, and we've been monitoring that closely. And whilst the businesses, industries down there have improved out of sight in terms of low emissions to dust, that's been a bit of a success down there as well in terms of close contact with that community. So all in all, Mr. Chairman, really proud to be part of this program, and glad that you're on board and other agencies aboard. It's a good news story for this year.
Kia ora. My name is Robin Riley. I'm an asset manager with Kāinga Ora, covering the Bay of Plenty, including the Rotorua district. Kāinga Ora is delighted to participate in this initiative. We have almost 700 properties in the area affected by the air quality. We are committed to ensuring that our heating appliances in our properties are compliant with the national environmental standards, and this endeavour sits very well with our mandate to provide healthy, warm and drier homes for our whānau and tamariki, and in turn the wider community benefits. Our programme of works include retrofitting our properties to include full insulation, double glazing, new heating systems and improved air tightness and ventilation. We have over 100 retrofits in the pipeline, as well as 40 new homes planned in Rotorua that will meet and exceed these standards. While the upgrades and improvements to ensure compliant heating systems are ongoing, they are part of our wider brief to provide quality homes for our communities. We are committed to improving our housing infrastructure, thereby benefiting our communities and the regions they live in. On behalf of Kāinga Ora, I would like to thank the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and the other participants. It's a really important initiative for us to be involved in, and we look forward to working with this group in the future. Thank you.
Kia ora, through you, Mr. Chair. This slide is a snapshot of what has been achieved over the last 10 years. So it's just some figures there for you, as at the 31st of December. Education and advertising. This has been a key part of the Rotorua Air Quality Implementation Program. It's played an important part in helping the community understand why there is a need to improve air quality in Rotorua. The big question is, and it's been alluded to already, is has our approach worked? It certainly has, and there are two graphs on this page. So the one at the top shows you Rotorua's air quality in 2008, the annual exceedances. Above the red line is when the pollution reached a concentration level that exceeded the national environmental standards for air quality. The height of the spikes also show the concentration level of the exceedances. You can see that during 2008's warmer months, the levels were very subdued. And then in the winter time, there was a considerable spike in the concentration of smoke it's the smoke, the particulates in the smoke that has caused that. And in 2008, we were dealing with 37 exceedances in total. And that was the beginning of Council's retrofit program. We started in 2008 retrofitting homes with insulation and replacement heating that was cleaner for the air. The bottom graph is 12 years later. Rotorua has moved from 37 exceedances in 2008 to 1 in 2020. This demonstrates the success of the Rotorua Air Quality Program. The program has made a significant difference. As well, the concentration levels on the high pollution days has continued to track down since 2010, to the point that the one exceedance we had in 2020 was only just above the National Environmental Standard. The 2020 year was the first time since 2006 that Rotorua met the National Environmental Standards for air quality. In saying that, it was one of Rotorua's warmest winters recorded, and this would have had some effect on the result, as the weather does influence the results. If it's a particularly mild winter, people light their fires less, producing less smoke. If it's a very wet winter, the particulate matter gets removed from the air. The Rotorua community can be very proud of the way it has slowly and systematically improved its air quality. But Rotorua will only stop being a polluted airshed if the PM10 standard is not breached and it can maintain that result for 5 consecutive years. So this makes it very important that we must keep the momentum going. We can't stop what we're doing. We need to keep it going. It's been a slow, steady journey, and the community have come along that journey with us. For the last 11 years, regulations and supporting incentives have been promoted. Funding incentives end on the 30th of June 2021, but the regulations remain in place. Light enforcement was to commence in 2020, over the 2020 winter, but with COVID, that was put on hold. Enforcement of Rotorua's solid fuel burner regulations is planned this winter, and all smoky fire complaints will be investigated, and repeated non-compliant solid fuel burner use could result in being fined. So we've covered Rotorua's historic air quality results. We've brought you up to speed with its current situation, and to finish off, we'd like to tell you what's planned for the future. The National Environmental Standards for Air Quality are currently being reviewed by the government. The government has indicated they will move the concentration limit for particulates from PM10 to the much finer particulate 2.5. This shift is supported by the World Health Organization to improve health. It's our understanding that the government are waiting for the World Health Organization to update its air quality guidelines. Once that's complete, we can expect the government to release their decision on the new National Environmental Standards for Air Quality. The shift to PM 2.5 will mainly impact New Zealand towns and cities where their main source of air pollution comes from wood smoke. This is because the composition of wood smoke is such that 90% of wood smoke is PM 2.5. When the government regulate a shift from the PM10 to the PM2.5, this is going to have a national impact. For example, councils that currently don't have any airsheds will find themselves with new gazetted airsheds. Councils that already had gazetted airsheds, like Rotorua, that were close to meeting the national environmental standards, are likely to find themselves exceeding the new national standards for air quality. What could this mean for the Rotorua airshed? When the national environmental standards for air quality change to PM2.5, the monitoring to date indicates that the Rotorua airshed will not be able to meet the new standards. This is going to have implications for Rotorua as well as other parts of the Bay of Plenty region. We will potentially pick up other airsheds throughout the region when that changes. When the government release their decision, if you think it would be helpful, the Rotorua Air Quality Working Party can update you again. And finally, this is our last slide, we would like to advise you that the airshed boundary extension is, we're in the throes of developing an airshed boundary, and that will be in place by the end of the year. The new boundary will incorporate any subdivisions that could contribute wood smoke into the airshed. This is to stop new sources of particulate matter from being added into the airshed. The extended boundary will protect Rotorua's air quality gains and avoid undermining the community's amazing efforts.
Chairman, I know your time is valuable and you've got a formal council meeting to continue, but we're happy as a panel to stay here and answer any questions that any members of council may have in yourself.
Thank you, Lyle and the team, for the presentation, and I will open shortly for councillors' questions. I have one from Councillor Bentley and followed by Councillor McPherson. But perhaps, Phil, I know you've presented to us before on the pandemic, and I just wonder, I know the figures you put up before are pretty healthy financial return on investment for this piece of work, but in terms of when a pandemic rears its ugly head, how important a healthy set of lungs is. Perhaps you could comment on that.
Sure. Everyone's at risk of getting COVID at the moment, unless you've been vaccinated. That will give you a fair level of protection. Or if you've had it before, that's going to reduce your chance of getting it a second time, but it won't eliminate it. However, beyond that, there are certain subsets of the community that are particularly vulnerable, and that includes people, especially with respiratory conditions, because the main clinical impact of COVID is on the respiratory system, is on the lungs. Tied up with that is the functioning of the heart as well. But yeah, improving air quality will help protect the community to an extent, reduce their risk of the impact of COVID. It won't eliminate it, but it can only help.
Thank you. Councillor Bentley, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to thank you, team, for your presentation today. And since it's been going on, so I understand from 2008, this project, regional council has spent an awful lot of money to provide for a cleaner air quality. Now, as an alternative for the future, I'm wondering if you would be keen on investing the same sort of money into promoting and enjoying geothermal heating as a clean and absolutely clean source of energy, of which we have plenty.
I believe that this has been reviewed before by both Rotorua Lakes Council and Bay of Plenty Regional Council. There are reports from both councils that, to summarise, say that retrofitting old existing housing stock is very difficult and very expensive, and unless you can piggyback off, say, a commercial bore, like a hotel or something like that, where they've already got the bore in place, it isn't financially viable for existing old housing stock. You also, if you put down a bore, you need everyone to be in close proximity. So if the cost to connect to the bore, well, to put it down and to connect to it was, say, 30k per household, you'd need about 50 households in close proximity that could afford that. And so it got all in, so Rotorua Lakes Council have a very good report on that. But for new ventures, it's completely different, a different set of rules. It would be easier to retrofit when you're so not to retrofit, but when you're building new, that would be the time when you could financially make it viable to do that.
Probably a topic of discussion for another presentation, Lyle, from the other joint working party we have on the Rotorua geothermal.
Of which I must add, we're very fortunate to have Councillor Bentley on. So there you go. That's the Trojan horse that comes into that committee from your committee. So.
Thank you for your answer. But as far as retrofitting existing houses, I've got a 1980s house which I put a bore down and retrofitted, if you like. It is certainly not that expensive.
So Councillor McPherson, and followed by Councillor Rokautate, Councillor Tapsell and Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you all very much for this very interesting report. First point is that all those who have been involved in this process since whenever deserve congratulations. This is obviously a big success story. But I want to pick up on one point about the sticks and carrots combination of implementation strategies. To be a little more specific, you have got some power coercive tools that you've used, but you've essentially used empirical and rational means to persuade people, and you've also used some very sensible normative and re-educative strategies to achieve these outcomes. So I want to draw attention to the nature of the implementation strategy. The combination has been very effective. But when I listened to Dr. Phil's presentation, it suddenly struck me we've got a parallel problem to do with clean air, possibly, I don't know. And my question is that, is it possible for this group to extend its remit to include the growing danger of microfibres, plastic microfibres, entering into our environment?
The scope of the Rotorua Air Quality Working Party is to deal with air pollution. So, no, it's outside the scope of this, sorry.
I wondered about that because I understand that some microfibres, plastic microfibres, are so tiny they are airborne. And I wondered if it could become part of the picture that you're going to have to address. But thank you for the opportunity to ask that question.
I think Dr. Phil's going to
if I could just respond, it's a very good point, but it's obviously not a Rotorua-specific issue. But what I will do is talk with colleagues in the Ministry of Health and to see what's happening at a national level.
Thank you for those answers. Councillor Rokautate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. There's a difference between home owners and people who rent. And for those of us who own homes, yes, we do what we can and everything. But you mentioned Fordlands and you mentioned Western Heights. And in those two areas, there are significant, many of them are renters, people who live in those areas, a great percentage actually, and those people are poor. Those people, many of them are Māori. I don't know when the last time you went into some of those houses, but you can smell the poverty bouncing off the walls. And I would hate to think that we have clean air now coming at the expense of the poor. Those people have compromised health, respiratory systems already. There is no one on your working party that's from a PHO in those areas who can tell you that the respiratory issues with the children is still as bad as it was many years ago. And I know that because of the position that I hold. So if the funding incentive ends on the 30th of June, what's going to happen there? I mean, you know, what I'm really talking about is, and I am absolutely, everyone wants to make sure that we've got clean air. Everybody wants that. And when we go home, we can turn on our, what do you call that things, heat pumps, and we've got matting on the floors and things like that, and we've got fireplaces. But what about the poor and who live in rented properties where perhaps their system has been taken out? Do we know of those 1,100 how many were absolutely replaced? And also, if the funding incentive goes at the 30th of June, what's going to be replaced for, there? This to me is a really big issue.
Robin, as a landlord, are you happy to have a crack at answering that?
Can I just go first
Yes.
and say to Councillor Raukawa Tate, you know, we've been very privileged to have Dr. Phil on this since day one, and if he is unavailable, we always have one of the other medical officers of health there, and we also have James, who's up in the back here, who is one of the country's best public health analysts, and he's at every meeting also. So we're getting impeccable information and science and research presented to us at every meeting. You can be assured of that. But I'll pass over to Rob, and then Marion might like to comment about particular suburbs that you have mentioned with regards to Fordlands and Western Heights. Yep. Robin.
Through the Chair, I can only comment on Kyangaora's housing. I cannot comment on private rentals, and I'm not quite sure, is that what you're referring to? Or are you referring to our public housing that's owned by Kyangaora?
I was just referring to the funding that has been available. If that discontinues, then what can people do then?
Yes. In terms of Kyangaora's properties, we are retrofitting. We are, through our Healthy Home Scheme, actively making these homes warmer, drier and healthier for whānau and tamariki. Now, when a home becomes available and it's put back into the rental situation, it is scoped to a lettable standard, but it is scoped to a Healthy Homes standard. So we are working to get every home in Rotorua to that standard. So, you know, we have until 2024, Kyangaora, to do that, to get that process completed. But we are also addressing 65,000 Kyangaora homes in the whole of New Zealand. But there is no doubt that the asset infrastructure, through many years of underinvestment, needs a lot of work. And we are actively committed to that, and our teams are working in so many different areas to try and to improve the level of homes for people who are poor. Heating is a big factor in that. And we work with our tenants to try and...
Thank you. Look, thank you very much. Can I just want to comment on something that Lyle has said? I need to stress that the situation for the poor in our community is getting worse. They do not have good houses that suits their needs. Their houses are cold, and the problems with their health is getting worse. It is getting worse, and I just don't want them to be seen as, you know, for some of us, we're fine. But there's a great sector in our community where it's not, and the Māori voice needs to be heard on this.
Councillor, be assured it doesn't fall on deaf ears.
Yes, it's a good question, and I appreciate it. The Regional Council has, in fact, it was a mandate of the Rotorua Air Quality Working Group, is that we never wanted to fix the air quality at the expense of creating another problem where we ended up with cold homes. That's always been our overriding principle. So throughout the 10 years, we have always supported the scheme. We've had special schemes for the low income. Those schemes have been free replacement heating and free insulation. 2008, we started doing that. We did hundreds of properties initially in 2008 for about 4 years. and those were all free insulation, free heating. So it was the most vulnerable. I guess it's also, it's an example of the collaboration. So we work closely with the health sector. So we find those homes, they will contact us if they know of a home where there are high health needs. Just last week, I was in a whānau-owned home where we had a meeting where the house needs some major work done on it. So together we were able to work out who was going to do what. It needs a new roof, it needs plumbing work, it needs ramps. The owner can't live in it at the moment because she's had a fall. So the work was needing to be done, but we certainly go into those cases, into those homes. I see those homes because I go into the very low income homes, assess them, but we were able to, in that house, get a really good outcome. So where we can at least pick up the heating, the insulation had already been done, compliments of ECA. So it is working together to try and make sure that we pick those homes up. So we have definitely always focused on the low income.
Thank you, Marion. And I think those comments are is applicable to this council with its Homes and Thriving Communities strategy as well. So 2 more questions before I call this to a close. Councillor Tapsell, followed by Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, thank you to the councillors, staff and also partners. It's great to have this evidence in front of us of the anecdotal stories that we've been told as elected members, in particular of our families that are struggling in Edmund Road, which is Western Heights in the Fordlands area. I do have a question that follows on from Councillor Rokawa Tate's, because when I think about those families in those areas, they are also the most likely to be at risk of not being able to convert to clean heating. So the question that I have is, what heating incentive schemes will be available in future? And I acknowledge that there has been significant work in terms of helping those families to afford not only heating but also insulation, as you've mentioned. And my second question is, what support will be provided to those who are non-compliant to convert? And those questions come from a line in your slide that says enforcement of Rotorua's solid fuel burner regulation is planned in winter. And I know that some families in our community would hear that and be very concerned about their ability to afford to convert, and therefore very concerned about the health of their family if they need to stay in a house that doesn't have heating. So back to those questions, what heating incentive schemes could be available to them?
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. There is currently the Warmer Kiwi Homes scheme at the moment. That is a national scheme. That is insulation and heating. It is an amazing scheme. It's very generous, so it's centrally government funded. Any deprivation zone that is an 8, 9 or 10 can access the ECA funding. And so it's insulation first. So if the house isn't insulated, they get insulated. ECA cover 90% of that. And I believe that there are some trusts that cover the top up, the 10%. So they essentially get their insulation for free. They also do an up to $3,000 heating grant as well. So that is the main one that will carry on after our incentives stop. In our long-term plan, but I'm not in a position where we're able to discuss it because, like your long-term plan, we're still working through those issues. But there was a question in our long-term plan that was asking if the community would support a voluntary targeted rate scheme for the Bay of Plenty region. So that, yes. So that is in the pipeline. I can't say yes or no, but that is being discussed in our long-term plan.
I think Councillor Tapsell also had another question about those who flatly refuse to be compliant. Going forward?
The question, just to reiterate, was around how enforcement of Rotorua's solid fuel burner regulations is planned this winter, and what support will be provided to those who are non-compliant. For example, instead of just giving them a fine, will there be some discussions on these are the options available to you?
Yes, we always take the education first, the encouragement, and engage with them first. That is always our first approach. So they would receive a warning, but if they continue to do it, then enforcement measures would have to be enacted, and it's just standard under the RMA enforcement. They would need to probably go through ECA or something at this stage. We will discuss their options with them, but they will have missed the deadline unless they can get it done before the 30th of June 2021. The Regional Council, up to that point, will not have funding assistance after that, unless through the long-term plan another process comes into play.
And finally, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you for the good news presentation of air quality. Thank you. I saw one of your slides. Could you tell me more about, because I thought this was a major problem, cars, trucks and all those things, fumes and various things, but it seems to be an indication that that's a less of a problem. Is it something we can relax about?
Go back to what I said, that there's no safe threshold. In terms of what contributes to particulates in the air, any burning of any organic matter, any fossil fuel, anything organic. So whether it's burning wood in your fire, having a bonfire to get rid of rubbish in the backyard, if you're allowed to, good. Any exhaust coming out the tailpipe of any vehicle, whether it's burning petrol or diesel, all of this contributes. But what we know in Rotorua is that by far the dominant cause of the problem is home wood fires. It's not the only one, so we should do everything we can to reduce the levels because, as I said, there's no safe threshold. However, it's almost like the sort of 80-20 rule. We're going to get at least 80% of the benefit by just focusing on the wood fires.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell, for that last question, and thank you to Robin, Lyle, Phil, Marion and Kevin. Thank you for coming to present today. It's been a great story.
Chairman, can we just reassure you in answer to Councillor Merapeka, that, you know, we are acutely aware of the social deprivation in Rotorua and the issues that you're confronting at the moment, and we are fully supportive of anything that you do in that direction. But I just want to commend our staff, and your staff in particular, Marion, for the extra mile that she goes to engage with these families who aren't highly skilled in terms of communication in particular, and she works and goes that extra mile to support those socially deprived families that we know are quite prolific in Rotorua. But can I also thank Robin and Catherine for coming some distance to support us today from Kaingaora, and can you, on behalf of us all, please extend our sincere sympathy to her worship. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Will do. Thank you much. So, councillors, we'll take a break for morning tea, and we'll be back here at 5 to 11. Thanks. council minutes of the 25th of March 2021. Ask for a mover and a seconder for the motion that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 25th of March 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Moved Councillor Bentley, seconded Councillor Tapsell. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendations from other committees. So the report of the Operations and Monitoring Committee of the 8th of April 2021. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion that the report of the Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting of 8th April 2021 be received? Councillor McPherson, seconded Councillor Wang. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So we now move on to the following recommendation, that the Council agree that the proposal to deaccession objects from the collection of Rotorua Museum, Te Whare Taonga or Te Arawa, be approved. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Kaifong, seconded Councillor Bentley. Is there any discussion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Report of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting of the 15th of April. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report that the report of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting of 15 April 2021 be received? Moved Councillor Rotorua Tate, seconded Councillor Yates. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we have the following recommendation. That the following recommendation from the SPNF meeting of the 15th of April be adopted. Recommendation 1, that Council agrees that the draft open space level of service policy is adopted with the amendments recommended by staff. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Moved Councillor Wang, seconded Councillor Yates. Is there any discussion? I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2, Community Funding Investment Policy Review, consideration for long-term plan budget. Part 1, that Council agrees the draft Community Funding Investment Policy is adopted with the amendments recommended by staff, excluding the change to the community grant funding range from $3,000 to $5,000, which will remain the same at $1,000 to $5,000. And secondly, that Council agree the Te Rako Tu Pakari Fund close in September 2021, 1 year after commencement. Moved Councillor Tapsell, seconded Councillor Bentley. Is there any discussion? I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Recommendation 3, Rotorua Lakes Council's Waste Assessment 2021. The recommendation is that Council approve Rotorua's Waste Assessment 2021. Moved Councillor Wang, seconded Councillor Yates. Is there any discussion, comments? I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Recommendation 4, Statements of Intent for Council and Controlled Organisations for the year commencing 1 July 2021. That Council submit the agreed comments on the draft Statements of Intent for Infracore Limited, Rotorua Regional Airport Limited and Rotorua Economic Development Limited. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Kaifong, seconded Councillor Maxwell. Is there any discussion? Councillor McPherson.
It's just a question. There were a number of suggestions made by people about how those statements of intent could be reviewed and possibly improved. And I wondered if those suggestions stand as agreed comments, because there was no testing as to whether or not the views of people were indeed agreed.
Yeah, so you're talking about the councillor feedback provided at the
Precisely.
Meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they have been fed back, but they of course actually can't form part of an agreed position change because they were literally items of feedback.
So the motion is not that we adopt the statements of intent, it is that the agreed comments, submit the agreed comments. So we've submitted those comments. That's what this recommendation is saying.
Yes, my question is about the degree to which we actually agreed. And if we didn't, and they were simply ideas from people, they probably don't qualify as agreed comments, however valuable they might have been. So, given the nature of this resolution, I would therefore have to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, that's noted. So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? And Councillor McPherson's abstention is noted. Thank you. Recommendation, Local Government New Zealand Conference 2021. I am asking for a mover and a seconder to receive the report, that the report Local Government New Zealand Conference 2021 be received. Moved Councillor Tapsell, seconded Councillor Wang. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So I invite Rick Dunn to overview this report.
Thank you, and through the Chair, I'll take the report as read, but I will comment that because of the COVID situation in 2020, the LGNZ conference was cancelled in 2020 because of COVID. So the 2021 conference is going to be in the same location in Blenheim, and it's recommended that 2 council members go to this conference, and it's themed LGNZ Conference 2021, Re-Imaging Aotearoa from the Community Up. So the recommendation is for Councillor Rotorua Tate, who's the Chair of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee, and also leadership responsibilities for housing plan implementation linked to communities, neighbourhoods, papakainga and district development. And the second recommended is Councillor Kaifong, who is the Deputy Chair of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee, with the following leadership responsibilities of council-controlled organisations linked to district development and growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. So my understanding is it was the same 2 nominations for the previous, the postponed conference, but we never brought it to council because of the pandemic?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. Are there any other questions of Rick? Okay. Any discussion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please. I'll put to the vote that Council determines that Councillor Rotorua Tate and Councillor Kaifong attend the 2021 Local Government New Zealand Conference. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, sorry. Moved Councillor Tapsell, thank you. And seconded Councillor Wang. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And you will, I'll just advise members that Te Tātou o Te Aroa have indicated that Rawiri Waru, Jeff Rolliston and Jude Pani will be representing our Te Aroa Partnership Board at that conference. I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder that we go into public excluded. Moved Councillor Maxwell, seconded Councillor Yates. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. The reasons for going into public excluded are to protect a person's privacy, to maintain legal professional privilege, commercial sensitivity, and to enable commercial or industrial negotiations. So we'll just have a short pause while public leave the room. Thank you. Thank you, Felix.
Mr. Chair, am I able just to raise a quick question in regards to your comment that you just made that 3 Te Tātou o Te Aroa two Te Tato Te Arawa members plus Jude Honey was going to the conference. But on the agenda it says that it's only one Te Tato Te Arawa member. So just confirming if it's three or was one.
Yeah, I